Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast. Ozcast. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
The Word Docs acknowledge that we meet on the traditional country of the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains. We recognise and respect their cultural heritage, beliefs and relationship with this land. We acknowledge that these lands are of continuing importance to the Kaurna people living today, and we extend that respect to other Aboriginal language groups and other First Nations.
Why don't you write when you don't need money, honey? That would certainly make a hit.
Welcome back to Word Docs. I'm your host, Alex Vickery Howe. I'm here with Amy T. Matthews.
Hello.
And Sean L. Williams.
Hello.
I always feel like we're at a wrestling match when Alex is hosting.
In the red corner, small but deadly.
Are you ready to rumble? And the answer is no. Everyone's quite tired today.
Yeah,
but
we're very tired. Despite the gold-plated chocolate that Alex Vickery had made us eat.
I did not make you eat that. I feel guilty.
It was me. All along.
We are. This is kind of apt. We are here collaborating as we discuss collaboration.
That's very deep, Alex.
Yeah, very deep, very meta, layers. There's layers to that. People don't think I'm deep; they think I'm shallow. But if you dig far enough, there's something under there.
There's something down there.
I'm not sure I want to see
dark.
it. I don't want to. Who wants to delve that deep? You meet Balrogs and stuff down there.
Balrogs, multiple Balrogs. So. I guess there are different versions of this we can discuss. I've been thinking about collaboration a lot because I'm about to jump back into a couple of plays back to back, and that always gives me the sense that I'm not totally in control of this story, and I'm going to have to work with the other humans to make something happen.
That's a really interesting point, I think, about collaboration. Because, you know, being a writer is so often about being in your own head. And then you bring in that idea of having to surrender your ego and your personal vision and the whole auteur thing to make something with other people and to accept that they have their own ideas.
It's funny that writers, it's the kind of only job in the whole world where we expect to work on our own with no interference.
Yeah.
And we feel mortified when somebody says, oh, perhaps you could do this. And you go, no, I'm the boss of my world. Stay out of it. But everybody else has to work with other people.
Yeah, even in television, right? Like it's just novelists. It's just novelists and poets.
No, I'm trying to think of other jobs where you work totally alone. Undertaker came to mind, but you've got a
serial killer.
Yeah.
serial killer. Not if you're
there
lucky.
There are pairs. There are sometimes pairs of serial killers.
If you're lucky enough, you find a like-minded friend and you collaborate.
Oh, dark. Dark.
But you're right. There is that sense of we have worlds in our brains and we control them like puppet masters, and then suddenly you have to share your toys, basically. I think that's what it feels like.
It's very hard to build a shared imaginary, don't you think? Like, I think it often works really well in established worlds, like Sean, like Star Wars or Doctor Who, but when you're building a world from scratch, it's quite hard to both have the same thoughts in your head without doing a lot of work beforehand. And I think we're so used to the imagination being a kind of quiet solo space.
Yes, yeah.
Well, I don't know. I know what you're saying, and I think you're right on the whole, but half of my works have been collaborative and made up from scratch collaborative.
But to this day, is it the same thing in your head that's in your collaborators?
No, it's not. But
even at the book launch.
But no more than the version of me, words.
Come on.
Any more than my vision of the world is the same when I finished writing a book as the vision of the world I had when I started writing the book. So in that sense, we're collaborating with ourselves anyway, except past Sean and future Sean aren't often in dialogue unless I've left notes for future Sean saying, you've got to fix this now.
I've had this when I have a little archive hidden away of short films I wrote and directed, none of which are particularly fantastic. But you suddenly do have the thing where you go, I'm arguing with the other version of myself. So I had to shoot something during the day that was written as a night scene. And I was sort of in conflict with myself going, well, it should be a night scene, but actually on a practical level, past Alex, that was never going to work. So that's kind of interesting when you're fighting with yourself.
So can I ask you some questions, Sean?
Uh-oh.
Not about this topic, just really deeply personal.
When you talk about that collaboration, so you said half of your works have been with other people and in from scratch worlds. How does that work? Can you describe the process of how that works? Because I've not done like creative work collaboratively.
It always starts off with conversations. Every time I've done it, it's been based on conversations about what we could do. And it's an externalization of that fun process that we all do when we're coming up with stories and worlds anyway, inside our own heads or in collaboration with notebooks and computers and now AIs, all that kind of stuff. It usually involves just sitting around. With Shane Dix back in the early day, my first novel ever published was a collaborative novel. With Shane Dix.
I didn't know that.
That's right. And we would sit around a Pizza Hut and eat back when it used to be a restaurant, and we'd eat so much pizza that we felt physically ill, and that was the time to go home and ruminate on what we discussed. But and out of everything we discussed came the sort of shape of the world and the people who were in it. And
what was the book?
It was called The Unknown Soldier, and that later became the trilogy, the Emergence trilogy.
Right.
Later, big things blowing up. Sort of like Star Wars crossed with Blake 7, if anybody remembers Blake 7.
And what
really
was
dark.
the Pizza Hut?
What was the Pizza Hut?
Yeah, because
what pizza was the one that got you going?
Henley Beach Road.
Henley Beach Road, okay. Because most of them are gone now.
And this was pre-vegetarian era?
Yeah, that's right. We're talking 1993, Alex, back when there used to be Pizza Hut restaurants. It was a very long time ago. Oh my God,
the red and white check
30 years ago now.
Yes, and the little gingerbread man and the puzzles.
The salad bar.
Little pencils.
Bring it back.
It was a big event too.
It was.
We're focusing, I feel like,
on the wrong details.
I'm shocked that it was 30 years ago.
30 years.
So then Shane and I did that for that series, and then we did it for another series, and then we did it for another series, and then I've done it with Garth a couple of times, and various short stories and things. So it sort of feels like second nature to me, but it was hard the first few times, and I had to do a bunch of research about how to collaborate. And
so what was hard about it?
Well, just learning how to communicate and how to balance. I think my idea is great with somebody else's opinion that it's shit.
Before you know it, you're throwing pizza.
So what happens when you get to that point where you're just invested in an idea and you're like, this is really good, and the other person wants to change it, or like, how do you negotiate that?
So there was one. There were lots of different ways, but there was a great article by Larry Niven written in the 70s. Larry Niven was a great collaborative science fiction writer, a really influential science fiction writer from last century. And he had a list of kind of guidelines collaboration, which I've responded to in an essay of my own. But one of the guidelines that I read back then, once I knew I was going to be collaborating, I got a copy of this essay and read it. One of his pieces of advice was someone should hold veto power. So, and in fact, Alex and I, we've discussed that in our collaborations, that if ever you hit an impasse where you just cannot negotiate past a point, years ago, before you even started working on your ideas, you agreed that somebody would be able to say, we're just going to do it this way. And then you can go, okay, right, the decision's made, and we'll just get on with it. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it that a friend of mine with her collaborator did it, only things that they both agreed on went into the book.
Oh, it's like when you're naming a baby.
Yeah, exactly. And that worked really well for the first book. The second book was like detonated their friendship, and they'll never talk again.
Yeah, that worries
that's a
me.
fear, isn't it? Yeah.
So communication is the key. For the article I wrote about collaboration. In fact, I've got a conversation piece that's a summary of that article online that you can hunt up.
I've read that. I read that.
Oh, there you go.
I am your reader.
Thanks, Alex. That was my one hit. And I interviewed a bunch of people who've collaborated in pairs or trios. And the best piece of advice that Deborah Biancotti gave me, a friend who's a collaborator, she just said, communicate. That's just talk. Being in a collaborative relationship is like being in a romantic relationship, which is why people always say that Garth and I act like an old married couple.
I wasn't going to say
when
it.
we're traveling. I know, but it's true though. It's very collaborative, and we understand each other very well. And
What was the
we still
word?
disagree though.
There was a word you were sort of not bickering about.
Oh,
I can't remember
Yeah, recently.
Yeah, and I just thought these two
can't remember.
like really are like an old married couple. It was very funny. So it's
sorry.
go on, say it.
I was just going to say, we've just arranged to go to a conference in Canberra, and it's like we wouldn't go without each other, and we tried to make sure our flights all aligned, and we're staying in the same suite, and we're telling people, oh, Sean and I are coming, Garth and I are coming. People must assume we're in some kind of weird little relationship, but we are in a weird little relationship. We might write books together, and we're very good friends, and we like traveling together, so that's all good.
That's
I sound a bit defensive.
It's very sweet.
But it is
Well,
very
yeah,
sweet.
it sounds like it as well that you've negotiated a very successful collaboration. So who gets veto power? Sure.
Oh, Garth does. Yeah, Garth. Well, actually, it's funny because you can break up that veto power. So
Yeah.
Garth has the ultimate veto power when it comes to matters of business and editing. But I have a little bit of veto power when it comes to world building.
Yep.
I don't know.
That's
whether I
your
actually
jam.
agree. That's my
It's your
jam.
jam.
So,
So
he
you-
kind of lets me play.
Yeah, you hold the conch at different times, to use a weird Lord of
Yeah,
the
Yeah,
that's
Rings
right.
metaphor.
That's a literary one at least.
That's good.
One
Yeah,
is-
one of my better ones.
So that's one way you can break up that kind of process, because really you want to, like in any kind of relationship, you want to avoid conflicts that can't be resolved. So having veto is one way to just skip past the conflict and go, we're just going to get on.
It's
Do you-
interesting.
Do you think as well when you're working on a collaborative project, you shift into a slightly different gear as well? Like you, there's that ego thing, right? Like your personal vision versus here we're going to have fun playing together.
Yeah. Yes.
Do you think you're just operating in a different mode?
I think yes and no, because I think, yes, it really helps to think that way. But I keep coming back to that point I said earlier, that even when we're working on our own, that's still weirdly collaborative.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Okay.
we are multitudes within ourselves in various ways, not just temporarily, like across time, but I think maybe I'm just speaking for myself. Maybe I'm sort of borderline multi-personality disorder or something like that. But I do feel like that when I'm nutting out an idea, there are lots of different threads happening in my mind at once, and it feels like a constant kind of negotiation. Well, I can do this plot-wise,
Yeah.
but my character won't ever do that. Okay, well then I can rearrange my plot because by bringing in this aspect of world building. But then if I have that world building, that's going to screw up the plot in a different way, and it feels like a constant negotiation.
Yeah, right. Is that how you feel, Alex?
I've just been watching Psycho with my undergrads, and just any talk of being split in any way has a different shadow hanging over it. What I find interesting listening to you both. Well, I've got a question for you both in a second. I'm just going to bookmark.
And I want to hear Amy answer the question. she
Yeah,
just asked
yes.
I
you
think it would be
too.
different.
Yes, but because I think there's different modes of collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
So I have this rule where if I'm doing a play, the writer is alive for the first week and then he dies. I have the writer dies rule, and other playwrights I know do this. I was given a really strong dressing down from a TV showrunner who said never, ever have that attitude. You must control the room. And I went, maybe in TV, okay. But what I'm finding in theatre is it's better if I die because no one looks to you anymore and it doesn't undermine the director. I think that's really important. And B, it's my way of letting go and just going, well, I'm dead. So
Don't you think also TV is probably different because it's one film thing, whereas drama, it's an iteration. Like it's this
yes.
performance of it. Whereas then
That's
in a
right.
year, some other company might do a different interpretation of it.
I think so. And so you can just kind of step back and go, this is
Not the only one.
This is not the only one that will ever happen. But
So you're a bit like a songwriter. You're a bit like somebody writing a song, and then there's an
Yeah.
Elvis version,
Yeah.
there's a Duran version,
And Adele
they're
does
all
it
different. And the songwriter should never come out and say, "Well, that's not the way it should have been done."
So, Patrick Marber, who wrote Closer. You ever seen Closer? It's a film with Clive Owen and Natalie Portman. But
We're
it was
obsessed with Closer.
have I talked about it before?
No, Nine Inch Nails
Oh,
is
no,
the song editors.
I was playing that the other day. It was very bad.
dear.
Other lecturers came into my room. It was very
Uh-oh.
bad. But the play Closer, Patrick Marber talks about. It's been I don't know. It's a very old play now, and he says. Sometimes you watch it and you go, that's exactly what I had in my head. That's brilliant. Other times he goes, I have no idea what's going on here. But my question for both of
Hang
you.
on, Amy's got to answer that question.
About collaboration.
Yes.
I find collaboration really easy as an academic. Like I've co-written articles and I really enjoy that process, and usually it's a Google Doc that's open and we're all writing at the same time. I've done up to 4 authors. And usually it's a great process where in the end you don't know who wrote what sentence. But creatively, I think I have a very different experience than Sean's describing because it's really weird. I would describe it as like prelingual.
Prelingual.
Yeah, I don't feel like I'm thinking, like I would find it very hard to communicate I think.
Because it's all happening in your head.
It's all just in this very murky, subterranean, instinctive kind of place. I don't want to mess around with that too much.
And yet you're such a marvellous and brilliant shaper of ideas.
I think I don't mind doing it for other people.
Oh.
I think in terms of myself, it's all happening underground. Do you know, like I think if I'm writing a book, I think one reason it's an irritable process for me at the beginning is that it's just kind of, I might do notebooks or dot points but I would find it's a different process. I think that's why I expressed it like that, because I think I did do a film degree and did write scripts, but again, I tended to work by myself until the scripts went to development. So I just think I'm a very solo creator when it comes to creative work.
Well, that feeds perfectly into the question.
Oh,
the secret
segue.
question, because both of you have worked with presumably multiple editors.
Yep.
Yes.
Publishers. And I think there's a degree of collaboration there.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And I'd like to know how that process differs from a direct co-author relationship.
Well, you always have veto power.
That's the difference.
That's one point.
Yes, that's true.
I think because you've got the clay, like I think the whole draft is there. Although, I don't know, because you have to do pitches and get feedback as well.
And because Garth and I did the collaboration where I would write the first draft and then he would rewrite it. So he would have the whole clay.
Yeah.
You're passing the clay.
But I think certainly in that case, Garth had lots of freedom to just do stuff without consulting, whereas an editor would never, they'd make suggestions and
But they
they'd make
wouldn't
edits,
presume,
but they
yeah.
wouldn't presume.
Yeah, it's more telling. I know, because we do it with our postgrads, the same kind of editorial, and it's really sort of really pointing out where the gaps are, where something doesn't make sense. It's more of a questioning than an actual writing process. And I've only ever had a couple of editors write whole sentence suggestions, and they're usually very early career editors. Like they haven't quite worked out. They haven't quite, worked with enough authors, because I don't want anyone else's words really in my book.
Well, that was going to be a follow-up question. Where's the line? I suppose that's the line for you once they start putting words in your mouth, as it were.
Like most editors, and the really experienced editors and agents tend to say things like, you'll find the appropriate fix for this, or you'll find but here's the problems I'm noting. Now off you go work it out. And some of them will give you suggestions like, at this point, these are a few of the things that might work to fix it, or, I just need more of her internal journey here, or more of their thinking, or I need to know why they're not getting along here, or it might be those kinds of things, but then you can go away and do it yourself. But I think maybe the difference is when we're thinking about that whole clay, for me, that kind of pre-lingual work is the creation bit. And when you hand it over to an editor, it's there. It exists in the world. Like the people are there, the world is there. World building, like Sean said, is like so much work, because especially I write historical, and that's, I think, very similar to sci-fi and fantasy, of you're creating a whole world from scratch in so many ways. So maybe it's that it's all there and you're handing it over and they're just reflecting back to you rather than having a hand in the actual creation of it.
At a point at which you feel ready as well, because it's on your terms at the point at which you hand it over.
Not really. The deadline.
There's a deadline. It's dragged out of your hands.
The last book I handed over, I knew that I didn't have the ending. So I kind of had written a really hasty ending, and it was like, that's not the ending. So please give me some reflection on what it is, and then I'll write the ending.
Yeah. It is a kind of collaboration, but it's a different kind of collaboration. I mean, I've worked with a really excellent, experienced editor who did write words on the page, but she always made it very, very clear that these were just a suggestion and I could take them out. And I quite liked that.
Because I think I'm more that kind of editor, like where I'll make suggestions for academic editing.
Yes.
I'll make suggestions for like a sentence like this. Like you don't have to use this one, but like this. And often when you do that, you're trying to model, this is the kind of language I want, or the kind of direction I want it to take.
Or the kind of size of intervention that's needed.
Yes.
You don't want, because it's nothing worse than when somebody says, you just need a little bit of this here, and you write 4.5 pages and they go, no, I just wanted 2 words.
Yeah.
I spent a week on that. It's a trap. It is a trap. It's a trap.
But what's interesting is how differently everyone works.
Yeah.
Like everyone's process is so radically different. So it seems to me like when you talk about it being like a marriage, is really the compatibility is a big thing. Have either of you worked with anyone you're antagonistic with? Does that energy ever work where you're in competition or you like it's not comfortable but it's really successful?
In an academic context, maybe.
Yeah.
Where you're really you're butting heads with someone to arrive at the third idea.
Yeah.
I've got no problem with that. As long as it's really understood that it never gets personal, right? As long as there's that very clear line.
Well, yeah, but you don't mind being a little bit fractious and having a bit of a discussion.
Yeah, because it doesn't. I mean, as long as it doesn't get to, and your face is stupid, like that, as long as it doesn't cross that line, I kind of go, we're just playing with an idea. And I'm also very like I can have a kind of a debate and then sit back and go, hey, on the other hand, your point of view is quite good.
I've been in that room with you, my friend.
Oh, yeah.
And then I just lean back and go, yeah.
Yeah.
they're both valid.
I'm quite happy to get into a heated debate. I am. And then 5 seconds later, I'll be like, let's have a drink.
But you've got to make sure you've got the right person.
Yeah, I know.
And that's probably a lesson for both
Both of us.
When you asked that question, my first thought was, no, why would I ever work with anybody that I didn't like working with or didn't have some kind of shared philosophy or direction with? But then I realized all the times I've worked with film producers on concepts and some of the stupid things they say, but they're paying you money to develop your idea, and because the goal is if somebody's paying you $40,000 to develop your idea into a pilot script,
You'll do it.
If you'll generally do it, you might push back a bit, but then you go, sure. Let's take out the matter transmitters and and just do this dumb thing, and I'll demonstrate to you why it's a dumb idea. And
that's kind of work for hire, right?
Well, it's tricky. Is it work for hire if I came up with the idea for the show? But it is sort of work for hire, but it's working on a property that I created. So it's a really slippery
books are the
space.
same. Like we want this. Can you write something to this specification? So I always think of it as being like a little bit like an espalier tree that you're kind of, if you're not like just growing wild, doing whatever you want, you're being kind of espaliered into a shape, or like, topiary trees.
I guess all art is espaliated. The question is, are we espaliating ourselves, or are we?
Yeah, how much of a hand do you have in it? Are you thriving as you get lopped?
Yeah, that's
vision
right.
of a tree trimming itself. That's quite weird.
It's very Lewis Carroll.
So I was thinking Roald Dahl.
One of my first roles was as a Daisy in a production of Alice in Wonderland.
Were you 6?
I bet
I was
you were.
7.
7.
I bet you were an ungovernable Daisy.
I was an ungovernable Daisy.
Yeah.
Oh, scene stealing.
I was a scene-stealing, ungovernable young man in my leotard and my giant daisy head.
Nothing's changed. So, Alex, you've done a lot of collaborating in theatre and film and have seen it and been part of it. And film and stage is, of course, not just collaborating between writers and directors, but actors and theatre tech and stage designers and all that kind of stuff. Costume people. That's a huge endeavour. Apart from killing yourself.
Killing yourself, that's the answer.
That's the answer. But you can't do that if you're an actor. You can't do that if the director has invited you in to contribute to the writing
And often
process.
they want you, it's so weird because they want you there. Because I think they want you there to be supportive and to sort of bolster the team. But also you can't draw focus at all because...
your inner Daisy.
My inner Daisy can't handle. So do you know what? I just constantly make coffees for people. I'm just constantly going, would you like a flat white? I can get you a flat white.
Get off the stage, Alex. We're filming.
What would you like? Okay. Because you need an activity that's nondescript. Because particularly actors and particularly young actors will just keep looking at the writer. They'll just... And they'll look for your facial expression and, whatever kind of tell you might have, whatever tick you might have.
Like holding your head in your hands and going and weeping.
Rocking gently, yeah. No, so I'll do anything to be friendly, supportive. And if I have anything to say, and I'm actually, it's unexpected from me, but I'm actually not inclined to say a lot, whereas other playwright friends I know are really strong and will pull the director aside and go, you've got to do this, that or the other. I will occasionally pick a moment and go, I imagine that would be a little more like X. But,
I can see that you would get involved if it was skewing the political message, if you're a political writer.
Yeah. Or, Amy, you've talked before about how casting changes things, right?
Yeah.
How suddenly you go, actually, we're now representing something differently.
And it's not in alignment with my values, and my name is on this thing.
Yep. And I know other people that have taken their name off things and have some very cruel and hilarious fake names they attach to things.
Alan Smithy.
Yeah, I won't repeat one because it's terrible. But
that is interesting because that's a question of ownership, right? Of who's got any kind of creative control, and then not just ownership but responsibility. That at some point where the buck stops with representation, for example.
It's very tricky and I wouldn't perhaps let this happen anymore, but directors used to add lines. And I remember one, and when I was very young and I didn't know that I could say no, or didn't feel comfortable saying no, there was a particular line in the Japanese rock musical I did that wasn't mine.
Oh.
And it was signalled out in a review for being a little bit on the edge of racist. Oh, no. And I went, that's something I now have to wear. That so I didn't speak up.
How do you feel about actors improvising then? Because there's a lot of cases in screen where actors improvise a lot.
Yeah.
It's complicated.
I remember when I was a kid, we did a panto. I was about 12.
What were you a tulip?
Yes.
Tulip in this one?
I was one of the kings in Sleeping Beauty, and me and one of my best friends.
One of the what?
One of the two kings. There's the Sleeping Beauty's father, and there's the prince's father, and they agree to try and get their kids together, I think. And we forgot our lines, my friend Nick, who's just fantastic, but he just went, "Well, let's have another drink. It's good to drink, isn't it? All the boys and girls in the audience should be drinking." And I went, "Oh!" And we were in big trouble. We went down badly.
Is that why everyone was sleeping in the castle?
Just tanked everyone. So you do worry that something might happen that you go, I've got to now aware that was said, and they're probably going to think it was me. And so it can be really tricky. And then, but by the same token, it can also be great when someone does something amazing.
Yeah, that's right. And then you get to take the credit for it.
Then you take the credit for it.
So all the jokes in the books that Garth and I write, they're all by me. All the really funny ones. All the bad jokes are by Garth. I find collaborating really exciting because, as one of you said before earlier, there's a sense of losing control a little bit. And even though inside my own mind, I know as soon as I start writing, what's that great line? No plan survives contact with the enemy. No outline survives contact with the typewriter. And that's more overt when somebody else is involved. And if you're working with somebody that you trust and like, and you're on the same page with, that can be a really thrilling journey. You're either going on the sled like Calvin and Hobbes, hurtling down a hill, excited, and everything's fantastic. And then if you crash, then you've crashed together, and that's great too.
And you pick yourselves up.
You pick yourselves up and you climb back up the hill and you do it all again. You know, it's nice to have a companion.
Yeah, it's a very lonely life normally.
We haven't really spoken about that. Do you find it lonely?
Well, I like my own company a lot. Like I'm an introvert, so
wrong answer. You've got us, Amy. That's the right answer. Us.
I do have you, but I think I'm an extrovert. Like when I'm out, I'm quite extroverted.
Yeah.
But I need to be alone a little bit
to recharge.
Yeah, and I like to be alone when I'm writing. I don't know. I mean, I like my family around. I like anyone who I don't have to perform for is fine.
How close can your family get? Because I think I've spoken on this podcast before about my imaginary friend Caleb and his mother just sitting next to him while he writes.
No one can watch me. No.
So can Johnny sit right next to you?
He can sit at the same table, but not opposite me, and not like anywhere he can see the screen. I don't want anyone looking at my screen.
I imagine Johnny kind of just peering up over your laptop.
Oh, he can be a pain.
Eyes.
Yeah.
Johnny, be a pain? Never.
Never. At least he's not throwing fake spiders in your bed.
Well, that is true.
Your partner's a few points ahead of mine right now.
My partner's perfectly well behaved, except occasionally she comes up and says, "Let's go get cake," and I go, "Yeah."
But I do wonder if there is a personality thing too about, because you mentioned control, one of you, Alex, you mentioned control, I think.
Control.
I think it's how much you can, it was you, Sean, you were talking about it's quite nice to let go a little.
I think I was riffing on something that Alex said, so let's take
both
credit
of
for
you
it. Shall we-
collaborated in that.
Yeah.
But yeah, how much you can let go of control in that creative space, and then how much you prefer to be alone, or whether you like companionship, or how you do it.
Do you think the combination can be like sometimes you've got your own thing that's kind of yours in that way, and other projects where you go, well, this is a shared thing. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I think maybe, and for me, it might be I'd be in different modes or different headspaces for the different ones.
Yeah.
And at different points in a novel, because novels take months, weeks to write, and it's great sometimes to be able to say, "Hey, I'm in control. I'm in control for this bit."
Yeah.
But later on, you can say, "No, I'm out."
I'm out. The crash is happening. I'm hurtling.
Yeah.
Quick question. Do you have much time?
One last question.
One
Alex.
last question. Okay. Which is time management with collaboration, because this is what holds me back.
See this is about blockages, right? We talk about this. Our colleague Tully and I talk about this a lot, about where projects get blocked, like where they hit that blockage point where it's not progressing, and you got to work out who is it, why is it,
what's happening. Because I think I'd collaborate more, except I'm so time poor, and the writing I get done for myself happens at weird times. Like I might just splurge something out at 1 o'clock in the morning, but there's no way you can do that with someone else. So that, I think the major barrier to me collaborating successfully is time management.
Except it's asynchronous, isn't it?
Well, that's how do you work that out if you can't actually be there together?
Well, you work it out. I mean, this is part of the communication process. You work out how the collaboration might work, and then you sort of stick to it. And if you can't stick to it, then you communicate.
Because there's stages here, right? There's the brainstorming kind of pre-writing stage where you're world building, character building, plot building, and then there's the actual writing, which it's pretty uncommon to both be working on the sentences at the same time. So I imagine there's like you, Sean, flicking drafts back and forth.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I've done for shorter works with my film and TV collaborator. We've sat opposite each other working on the same Google document, and that's immensely exciting and exhausting. It's so much fun, but I couldn't do that for a whole novel. I think I'd burn out.
Yeah.
Could do an hour a day and have a nervous breakdown.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's usually asynchronous.
Because I have another writer friend, and we've been talking about doing something forever, and we just desperately want to do it. But I haven't seen that person all year, just from sheer flinders.
Busyness.
Yeah, busyness. Sorry, busyness. And that's where it gets tricky. It's like, how do you work a pattern out together?
Well, the writer Sean E. Williams and I wrote a novel together, despite the fact he lives in the spam capital of the world in North America. So,
what's the spam capital of the world?
I've forgotten.
Oh, we should Google that.
There is a. I'm going to Google it while you guys have a conversation.
I'm curious to know where spam originates from.
So Sean E.
That's so
Sean
bizarre.
E. Spam Williams. Now I want to do the Monty Python song, but I copyright.
Oh yeah.
Copyright.
We should probably mention it, Alex. This is our last episode.
This is
of the
our
whole
last
season.
episode.
That's right.
We're coming to the end.
I can't tell you where the spam capital of the world is because.
And we're going to end on the ultimate mystery. Where is the spam? Oh, no, wait, no, he knows. He knows.
Austin, Minnesota.
Austin.
Oh, in fact, I should have done so I've actually got a giveaway for this episode, and I was just thinking I should have made it a competition. But no, I just want to give these books away. So you can look up my article on collaboration on The Conversation, the one that Alex has read. You can find that just by Googling Sean Williams, The Conversation, Collaborate. But I have a much larger version of that article. It's 3,500 words long. It's in an anthology, and I have about 20 copies of those sitting around at home. I'd love to move them. So if any of our listeners, if you, dear listener, would like a copy of this book, please just email one of us and I'll get it to you.
A competition would have been more exciting.
I know, it would have been more exciting.
Fine.
Or actually, do you want to make it a competition?
Sure, how?
I don't know. That was my next question to you.
Okay, send Sean the best spam recipes that you have, and he will pick someone who deserves the book.
And because I want to give them away, you might.
He's also a vegetarian, so he's not eating these, but he would appreciate a spam recipe.
The most entertaining spam recipes. They don't even have to be like practically possible. They just have to be entertaining.
When I first started writing, I used to slice spam up into fingers, dip it into a jar of mayonnaise and eat it until I felt sick. And it was like my favourite treat.
And that was after a day at Pizza Hut. My God.
Oh, no wonder you're a vegetarian now.
Yeah, that's right. Anyway.
Well, we shall end our collaboration for this season with, unfortunately, the only catch cry we've ever settled on, much to my horror, and that is...
Happy riding.
Happy riding.
Why don't you write when you don't need money? All your notes sound alike too much. All of them start with I love you, honey, but they end with the same old touch. Just for a change, send a nice loving letter and cut out that please remit. Why don't you write when you don't need money, honey? That would certainly make a hit.
Hey.
I didn't know we were doing it in unison. I wasn't ready.
I think it was a happy accident.
It was a happy accident.
Spam and mayo, huh?
Spam and mayo.
It's
God,
a
it was
sick-
nice.
you're a
It was
sick,
so
sick man.
beautiful. It was so fatty. And
Have you ever eaten spam, Alex?
No.
Spam is great.
I've never even seen... I've seen it.
Oh my God. I was once on a film shoot when I was in film school, and this guy who was producing it got his mum to cater it, and she made spam sandwiches. And it was like 42 degrees. It's like, I can't. I'm not eating that. No.
Oh, no.
Ugh.
It'd be all sweaty.
Oh, don't.
Sweaty should never be associated with food.
I think I have to agree with you there.
Yeah, I don't think anyone can defend the word sweaty with food, Alex.
Well,
Oh, except maybe like a sweating glass of gin and tonic.
yeah. So I was thinking sweating grapes, when they come out of the fridge and they're sort of dripping with moisture. But yeah, a sweaty gin and tonic would do it.
I'll allow that.
A sweaty pint of cold Guinness. Yeah.
Sweaty slab of sauerkraut.
Let's start a restaurant. The Sweat Docs.
How did a whole season go by already?
Yeah, no, that's weird, isn't it?
Yeah. Although I feel like I've lived a whole year already.
This year's weird, actually. It's gone quickly, but if I think about the stress level, it's earned its place.
Where's its place?
It's the spam of years.
It's part of the Chinese calendar you don't hear anything about. The year of spam.
Yeah, that's right. I'm a water spam.
What actually, do you know what you are? Because I'm a metal cock.
A what?
Of course you
a metal
are.
cock.
I am a wood rabbit.
Okay.
How do you I'm a sheep, but I don't know what kind of material I am.
There's no sheep, are there?
It's a goat.
So how do you know that you're a
Metal
Are
cock.
there sheep? There's no sheep, is there?
how do I look it up? See, it just says goat.
Goat.
It just says goat. I'm not a
Oh, no,
I'm
look
not a
at-
crystal goat or a
Crystal goats.
diamond goat.
Oh, look at hold on.
What would I like to be? Chocolate goat.
Chocolate
Chocolate
goat.
Chocolate goat. Greatest of all time.
You're a fire goat.
Oh, fire
Fire
goat's
goat.
good. Fire
That's
goat's
pretty good.
Yeah.
Fire goat. I need
Yeah.
a theme song. Go fire goat. Go fire goat.
I don't feel like
Set
wood
things on
rabbit
fire,
is terribly
go fire
fabulous.
goat.
The wood rabbit
Oh.
wouldn't want to be near the fire goat.
No, fire
No.
goats and
A wood rabbit wouldn't want to be near a steel cock either, Alex.
steel cock. Is it really steel cock?
It's metal cock.
Metal cock. Okay. That's better. But not by much.
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast. Ozcast. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.